Sup guys, Ascent here, and today on VR Reviews we're checking out Blade Sorcery. At the end I'm going to place it on a tier list and we'll check out how it compares to other games when we get a few more placed into the list later on in the series. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. Now to start off this game, you've got to pick out your arsenal, which you'll use to commit various violations of the Geneva Convention, all from the safety of your own home. I'm a swords guy myself, so I picked up these two hefty weapons, before quickly consoling myself with the notion that size isn't everything, and I flung them into the ceiling to be some kind of abstract chandelier. I love the way they get stuck. Now we start the real fun. Our first challenger is this edgy assassin chick, so I decide to employ the age-old tactic of divide and conquer, by dividing her head with my sword. This other dude seemed enthusiastic, but ultimately put up less of a fight than a toddler. After killing another, this hammer girl finally managed to land a hit on me, so she's braver than most, but this will inevitably be her undoing as I quickly dispatch this lost nun, and she gets run through and finished off with a sword to the brain. Now watch as I John Wick this bitch by throwing my sword into her abdomen and retrieving it like some Mjolnir of death. And of course, this game is called Blade Sorcery, so I thought I'd make use of my newly found mysticism to block an arrow with this barrel. Now I know why PewDiePie liked them so much. A few more kills here and there, including yeeting this girl with one of my swords and grabbing her axe. I decide to yeet this mage girl into a different game entirely, and I decided I don't need the axe. I can use these daggers I found and embrace my teen edgy fantasies. Once I absorb this firebolt so I can cauterize the wounds I inflict on my foes, this poor guy is victim to the first of many throat slits. But hey, with the fire enchantment, at least it won't bleed. My aim was a little off for this throw, but remember, disabling your opponents before mercilessly finishing them off with the same knife you used to disable them isn't a war crime if they haven't surrendered. Loopholes. Now this girl gave me some grief as I don't really think she understood her role as an NPC punching bag. She seemed to attain some form of sentience and tried to hug me. Perhaps her AI learned the meaning of love. We'll never know though, because I killed her too. This chick wanted even more smoke though, so I had to make an example of her by once again dividing and conquering. Only this time it was her head from her shoulders. Now after failing to perform some kind of Dishonored style backstab on this girl, I pushed her to the ground and stabbed her through, before seeing this poor man had fallen, so I decided to help him out by taking his walking stick and returning it to him. See, aren't I just a benevolent soul? This random guy just appeared out of nowhere, and I use him to perform possibly the greatest sequence of moves I've ever performed in this game, running him through, grabbing his axe and using it to hit this guy in the head before he can electrocute me. This other guy really wanted the smoke, but a swift right hook and an axe to the forehead really does a number on a lot of people. You'd be surprised. This game also has a really helpful mechanic of giving you a healing potion, which once you drink will replenish your HP. Although for some reason, out of all the things the game designers neglected to put physics on, the liquid of the HP potion wasn't one of them, so you physically cannot drink this potion while walking. Tucking that away in my pocket, I decided I wanted to become Oliver Queen from the Arrow, and steal this guy's quiver before grabbing a bow, and finding out that bow and arrows are actually really useful in this game, and performing possibly the greatest Rust 1v3 of my entire life. If I had these skills back when I was 14, I would have been an absolute legend. Now I enjoyed using a bow and arrow so much, I put together a phase style montage for you guys, where I headshot about 5 different people in a row, spectacularly. Until this bitch decides to ruin everything by rushing me. Now I smacked her about with my bow for a bit before ramming her head onto a spike for her war crimes against MLG. Now back to the montage. A few more brilliant headshot kills and a telekinetic grab shot here. I find this one chick who just deflects my arrow. Just what? And for her witchcraft she gets the tomahawk. But we'll move on for that, like, no one deflects my arrows. Alright, let's leave my MLG FaZe Clan fantasies in the past and move on to the actual review of Blade Sorcery. We still have about 6 minutes to go before the video's over, and let's start talking about the good and bad things about the game. Now first up, the good thing about the game is pretty much most things you think you can do it. I grabbed a knife and stuck it through a table and performed that Joker trick. And I tried to climb something using axes as hooks, and I was able to do that. Every brutal way you can think of killing a human, you can basically do in this game. You can slit their throats, or decapitate them, or chop off their legs and stab them in the heart. Literally anything you want to do, and any wacky, funny ways you want to kill someone, you pretty much can. And while sounding completely psychotic, that's part of the allure of the game. It's a great stress reliever. I'm in the midst of exam season at university, and honestly, just being able to chuck on a headset and punch, stab, firebolt, or bow and arrow someone, or an entire horde of people, is a really great stress reliever, and I would really recommend it to anyone with a stressful job or, engineering exams like me. Just don't go replicating it anytime soon, because the media already hates GTA, and this is a very easy game that they could quite easily get behind hating on. Now let's talk about some negatives of the game. It's a bit janky, the cartoonish style is a bit of a downside if you're looking for a gritty sword fighting sim where you're 1v1ing people one at a time and just going to town seeing how good your sword fighting is. It's not really the game for you. Unfortunately, the benefits of having a cartoonish style in which you can get away with some really brutal decapitations and arm lopping off without being too gruesome is a drawback for some other people who are looking for maybe a realistic sword fighting game. But overall, the game is an absolute gem. It's cheap-ish at about 25 euros, I think, and it's got endless replayability. There's no storyline, unfortunately, but what it lacks in storyline, it just makes up in time you can put into the game and just really enjoy having fun and coming up with creative ways to kill people, which again sounds really psychotic. I think maybe this game is turning me into a psychopath because I've done some really brutal stuff in this game that I genuinely can't talk about because I think I'd get arrested or at least put on a watch list. But that is the allure of the game. You can literally live out your fantasies of being a rogue or a mage or a ranger or a paladin or a warrior or a berserker with two-handed swords. Literally anyone with any kind of fantasy interest will absolutely adore this game, and for that reason I cannot recommend it enough. I'll leave the actual tier list ranking towards the end of the video, but if you've enjoyed any of the gameplay that I've done so far, and you think it looks interesting, I can promise you that it'll be 100 times better doing it yourself. Watching someone else come up with wacky and fun ways to fight and kill people in VR is 1,000 times better when you're the one coming up with wacky and fun ways to kill people in VR. So, skimming over the borderline Jack the Ripper-esque mutilation you've just seen me perform on those poor NPCs, the game's amazing. Review aside, my own personal opinion, regardless of pros and cons, is that the game is astonishingly good. It's got such great replayability and is really fun, and the physics aren't too realistic that you can't throw daggers like you'd want, but aren't too janky that it's hard to play. And that's without mentioning the extensive modding community. You can literally become a Jedi if you want using Nexus mods, and the community support for this game as well as the development support is still astonishing. So I originally had this game pegged as an S rank because of how much I enjoy it, but after looking at the pros and cons and all the facts, I've decided to put this game as an A rank. It's obviously not on the level of something like Half-Life Alyx, which I'm reviewing later on in the series, but it's still better than a lot of the games out there, so it's going to sit at A rank. So leave a comment down below of what game you want me to review next, and like the video if you, well, like the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.